Which forwards are doing their job so far with the Anaheim Ducks, and who needs to step up, and how can this Ducks offense improve? We'll talk about all of that on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here we go. Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Maybe you can place a bet on the Dodgers. Yeah, the World Series bound Dodgers. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Okay, let's get into this. The Ducks offense has been merely I don't want to say mediocre, but I'm going to. They've been mediocre to start the season. The Ducks so far have allowed plenty of goals. They've not scored many themselves. In fact, the Ducks are one of the worst offensive outputting teams in the National Hockey League right now. They're also the worst in power play percentage right now because they haven't scored a goal yet. Let me repeat that. The Ducks still have not scored a power play goal. Is that going to change against San Jose? Maybe it'll change against San Jose tonight. That remains to be seen. Right now, the Ducks have only scored a mere 12 goals. That's it. Yeah, the only teams worse than the Ducks right now as far as offensive output. You ready for this? The Oilers, the Sharks, and the Predators. Two of those teams don't belong there. One of them certainly does. At least the Ducks are only allowing 3 goals per game as opposed to their Oilers counterparts, Sharks, Preds, giving up over 4 goals a game. So at least something is going right. And I talked about that at length on the previous episode, being Lukáš Dostal. Dostal is the reason that the Ducks are kind of in it right now and not allowing 4, 5, 6 goals a game, unlike those 3 teams that I mentioned. Right now, the Ducks are scoring 2.4 goals per game. Oilers, Sharks, Preds only scoring 2 goals per game. That is it. So what's going on? What's going on with this offense, or who's doing their job? I'm going to start off on a positive note. I'm going to tell you who is doing their job, and that is the top line and probably one of the better lines out there of Frank Vatrano, Ryan Strome, Troy Terry. Those 3 have been lighting it up so far this season, and frankly, the only line that has been doing something worth a you-know-what. Even Greg Cronin has said that the other 3 forward lines have to follow the example of Vatrano, Strome, Terry trio and work to get pucks back. Okay, that's fine, Greg. What else did Greg have to say recently? Well, there was a recent quote about the rotation of blue liners, and he even said that there's always competition because there's 7 or 8 blue liners and not everyone is going to have the time. And this is how I'm going to transition that to the forwards. So this is about the defensemen. Quote, Vax played pretty well in Vegas and then he hasn't seen the ice since then. But as an 8th defenseman, that's the world he lives in. They all have to earn ice, and quite frankly, I wish we had more of that with our forwards. End quote. That's somewhat of a scathing quote from Coach Greg Cronin. He wants a little bit more effort from his other forwards. Right now, the Ducks don't have a whole lot of extra as far as forwards are concerned, unlike their defensemen who are angling to get some playing time. When you have 2 extra defensemen, that's going to happen. When you have hardly any extra on the forward side, yeah, that's going to change a little bit. One of that being Frank Vatrano. Yes, that's fine. By the way, more on Vatrano in a little bit. But as far as that first line is concerned, they've been doing it all. They've been doing pretty much everything for the Ducks. They are leading the team as far as points. Terry, Strome, and Vatrano have 9 points on that line. No other line has more than 6 points on their line. Troy Terry leading the team in goals and points like I predicted. that Terry would lead the team in points. He's got 4 points, 3 goals, 1 assist. Ryan Strome has 2 goals, 1 assist. And Frank Vatrano has 2 assists so far. Vatrano isn't scoring yet. He will score probably tonight. So if you want to make a prediction there, I'm just saying I think that Frank Vatrano is going to score a goal tonight. That's my prediction for that. But everyone else has got to step up. I'll even go deeper into the numbers here. So when I looked at the number, when I actually watched the games, they are the most noticeable line pretty much at all times. They're making effective passes. They're pushing puck play. They're actually pushing puck play and not just doing a dump and change, but they are actually going after the loose pucks. They're having a very good concerted effort, especially on those 50-50 pucks. Those are the kind of plays that you want to see your offense making. You want to see them have the effort on the 50-50s. And there's even some effort on the defensive side. Yes, you heard that right. So when I actually look into hockey stat cards and I kind of ask myself, do the numbers, do the analytics actually match up with what we're seeing on the ice? Obviously, the answer is yes, obviously. But to what extent? So I looked at the game scores for the Anaheim Ducks so far in 5 games. There is one player that is leading everybody as far as top average game score. And number 1 is neither of those guys. Number 1 is Pavel Mintyukov, who's had a pretty decent start to this season so far. He's had a couple of very, very good games, but this is about the forwards. But 2 through 5 on that list is Vatrano, Terry, Dumoulin, and then Ryan Strome. So your top line is 3 of the top 5 average game scores according to hockey stat cards. So when I break down each of these players, here's what I have for you. Frank Vatrano has the highest average game score out of those guys, .084. Troy Terry's next, .078. Ryan Strome, .048. So let's go deeper into those numbers. And I'm going to start with Frank Vatrano, who's got an offensive rating of plus 0.3, a defensive rating of plus 0.0 or 0.1. So he's got a positive defensive rating and a very good net rating in general amongst one of the better players in the league right now. So good for Frankie. Even though he hasn't scored a goal yet, he is still one of the better net rating players in the league so far this season. Small sample size, but still looking very good. Individual expected scoring is also very good for Vatrano. The assists are there. The expected goals are there for those guys. Then you look at the defense. He's blocking shots. I did see it, but I didn't realize that he was that much higher as far as block shots, and expected goals against is very high on that list. So that's pretty solid for Frank Vatrano. He hasn't had a negative game this season. He's gotten at least 1 block every game so far this season. So he is doing it on the defensive side as well. And I appreciate that from Frank Vatrano. I really do. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite Ducks on this team because of the effort that he is putting out every game on both sides of the ice. That's something that I think Ducks fans can easily get behind and someone that they can identify with. Ryan Strome, offensive ratings even better than Frank Vatrano, plus 0.4 offensive rating. So that's very good. Expected goals for is amongst the highest on the team, 3.33. That's very good. Offensively, his numbers are kind of through the charts so far in the first 5 games. I like it. It's very solid. Net rating is league average. Then we get to Troy Terry, who's doing even better than both of those guys. His offensive rating is plus 0.5. So if you combine their offensive rating, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, that's 1.2 offensive rating. Very, very good in this league right now. And their percentile is in the top 20% of the league. So yes, you expect that from that line, but it's even better than I thought. His defensive rating is even not all that terrible. But Troy Terry's not exactly known as a defensive juggernaut, but he is putting the effort in. You notice that at the first game. I did notice it on the first game, is the defensive effort was definitely there for Troy Terry, kind of, putting himself out there. That first game, I know he got a very key blocked shot in that first game. That was one of the better defensive efforts I've seen from him all season long. And then even the game against the Vegas Golden Knights, he was putting out some very solid defensive plays out there against Vegas. So that was good to see. Overall, he hasn't really had a bad game either. But offensively, you look at this line and it is a friggin' juggernaut. So that's some of the numbers and analytics behind that top line, who's doing a tremendous job. All right, we're going to head to the first intermission, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the rest of the forwards on the other side. And now a brief word from FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. And hey, fans, you can start this season. The NBA begins tonight. NHL just started. So you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. Let's say you're in the middle of one of those hockey frenzy games and you have a feeling. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And also, there's baseball on there, Dodgers, Yankees, World Series. You could place a bet on the World Series as well. Oh, yeah. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you are locked in with Jason Hernandez, talking about the forwards right now. And I went really deep into that top line, the Vatrano, Strome, Terry line. And by the way, just a little bit more on that line. Two of those guys have played in New York together. In fact, Strome and Vatrano both came in at the same time, and they've done a good job clicking together. So I still think it's imperative to keep Vatrano and Strome together as of right now, because they're doing about as good a job as they can. But there's a couple other forwards that I do want to talk about that have done a pretty solid job so far this season. And one of those is Leo Carlsson. Now, last year, Leo Carlsson was mostly on a line with Troy Terry. In fact, it was Troy Terry last season that helped things get started for Leo Carlsson. If you recall, around this time last year, around Halloween, we saw that Troy Terry wasn't nearly shooting as much, but he was becoming more of a facilitator and more passing it and kind of giving Leo Carlsson a bit of confidence, a bit of that boost in order to get him some good playing time, in order to get him some more goals. So it's good to see Leo Carlsson still doing pretty well so far this season, against small sample size. But Leo Carlsson, 2 goals already this season, 3 points, not doing too bad at all. And one thing, or one aspect of his game that I've liked seeing from young Leo Carlsson is the fact that on defense, he's getting a pretty good active stick. In fact, he is one of the best defensive forwards so far for the Ducks this season. I'm going to repeat that. Leo Carlsson has been one of the best defensive forwards for the Ducks so far this season. And in fact, also on Hockey Stat Cards, he's got a very high positive defensive rating for Anaheim so far this season. Offense is like, okay, but as far as the block shots, as far as the PK, as far as goals allowed, expected goals allowed, Leo Carlsson is still up there with the best of them. And certainly the best of them for the Anaheim Ducks. So you've got to give Leo Carlsson some credit for taking all the, not critiques, but, taking what is being asked of him right now. He's got a good active stick. He's bodying up players a little bit more than he was last season, which has to do with a little bit of confidence, but also bulking up slightly as well. So we're beginning to see that more from Leo Carlsson. Something to keep an eye on, by the way, when you're watching Leo Carlsson is Take a look at his neutral zone work. Something that I've kind of admired watching over the past few games is Leo Carlson is someone else that is going to keep pushing the puck as much as possible, and he's not going to shy away from going into those dirty areas. Something that I very much appreciate is a player that likes to kind of go after those 50-50s, but also get into the dirty areas. If he can keep that up for the next few seasons, you're going to see his goal total, you're going to see his point total begin to rise even more steadily than it has been in the past. So look for that next time you watch Leo Carlson play. Someone else that I got to give credit to that I think doesn't get nearly enough credit at all is Trevor Zegras. What do I mean by that? Well, Trevor Zegras has had a couple up and down games so far this season. Defense still needs a little bit of work, but that's not his fault. He's been left out to dry a couple of times by whoever he's skating with. But when I look at just his analytics, they could be a little bit higher. Yes, the last game against the Kings was not a good game for Zegras at all. But just looking at his play in general, his playmaking ability is still top of the charts. He should have at least 2 to 3 more assists so far this season, and he can't help it if who he's passing it to just cannot finish. That's not his fault. In fact, there was a very good play last game against the Kings where he kind of had like a backhand forehand kind of fake out and had a pinpoint pass to Ross Johnston, who just could not put it away. As I watched that, I'm going, why? Why can't who he's passing it to finish? That's what's got to be frustrating for Trevor Zegras. And it's got to be frustrating to really get his confidence going. Like, he's doing what he is supposed to do. He is supposed to be a solid playmaker. Should he put more shots on goal? He should always put more shots on goal. But when you're getting flanked behind the net and you have an open pass like that, yeah, take the freaking open pass. He did. And nothing happened there. Not his fault. I'm not saying that Trevor Zegras should be absolutely absolved from some of the poor shifts that he's had. There is still room for improvement for Trevor Zegras, especially on the defensive end. But looking offensively, he's doing he's doing the best he can. He really is. Some of you might not believe me, but judging by some of the shifts where he's getting good puck placement, where he is getting those pinpoint passes, that's good play. That's the kind of play that you want to see continue for the rest of this season. But again, not his fault. One other player that I do want to highlight as far as the forwards are concerned, and this is going to be, just a personal one for me, but I got to give a lot of props to Mason McTavish. McTavish has been a little bit snake-bitten so far this season. Try as he will, he's just had a little bit of bad puck luck so far this season. He's also had a couple of really, I'm not going to say horrid games, but he's also got to get a little bit better on defense. He hasn't been out on the penalty kill a whole lot, but just as far as taking not so good penalties, it hasn't helped him out a whole lot. Offensively, he has been snake bitten a little bit. I would say his best game probably was the game against the Utah Hockey Club with those 2 assists, obviously. But at the same time, he was doing a great job as far as starting to get into lanes a little bit. Some of that play that we saw from him in juniors, he's got to continue that. So just one of those other players that I think Ducks fans should watch out for just a little bit. All right, we're going to head into the second intermission, and we're actually going to talk about Frank Vatrano a little bit more because we got some news. We got some big news that just came through the wire. So we'll get to that on the other side. And now a word from Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all, but to match with Indeed. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster, but 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join the more than 3.5 million businesses that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this very show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. One more time, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you are locked in with Jason Hernandez, and we got some news that I think we definitely need to talk about, and this has to do with Frank Vatrano, who we talked about. Actually, a couple other news things. Isaac Lundestrom is out practicing. He was not in a red no contact jersey, so Isaac Lundestrom should be back in the lineup sooner rather than later, so that's good news there. That finally means we're going to see some competition in the forward lines. Who's going to be the odd man out as far as the forwards are concerned? Finally get some competition on the forward lines. Hallelujah. But the big news, and this is pretty awesome. Frank Vatrano is now a father of 2. This according to Derek Lee. Frank Vatrano's got a new daughter, Presley Vatrano. So that's now 2 daughters for Frank Vatrano. So congratulations to the entire Vatrano family. Nothing but just great joy all around. And this is what Frankie just said. It's truly a gift, and my wife did a great job. I was there for support as well, as much as I could be there for her, and I'm happy the baby's out, end quote. So now Frank Vatrano has 2 healthy daughters. Last season, Frank Vatrano did miss a little bit because of another birth, and now he's got 2 daughters. That's just terrific. His first daughter was Ophelia, who was born in 2023. So that was Frank Vatrano's first season with the Ducks, and he had to miss a little bit because of his daughter Ophelia. So now you've got Ophelia and Presley. Very nice names, by the way. Very just classical names. Yes, I already saw a couple tweets. Oh, Presley, like Elvis Presley? Well, I don't know. We don't know who the baby's named after. But Presley is also another classical name. So, for Frankie just to have that dad energy, that's going to be awesome. So once again, congrats to Frank Vatrano on being a father of 2 daughters. I mean, you talk about someone that's a girl dad. There are several athletes out there that just love being girl dads. And I have no doubt that Frank Vatrano is going to be the best dad possible to both his daughters. So congrats once again to Frank Vatrano. Oh, yeah, obviously to his wife as well, who, was a rock star through all of that. So Frank, Rebecca, congratulations so very much. Rebecca, true all-star, giving birth to 2 beautiful daughters, Ophelia and now Presley, born on this day, October 22nd, 2024. I know what I said earlier on, that I said that Frank Vatrano was going to score his first goal this season because he's been a blank. Yeah, now I'm going to double down on that. Frank Vatrano, I almost want to guarantee it. I almost want to. So you know what? I think I'm going to have to do it. So if there was any time for me to make a guarantee, this is it. So I'm going to guarantee right now, Frank Vatrano is going to score a goal, assuming he plays tonight, which I would think he would. Frank Vatrano is going to score his first goal of the season tonight against the San Jose Sharks. And I'll go even further. I think he will be the first star in tonight's game against the San Jose Sharks, who are still, by the way, without Macklin Celebrini, who is now out week to week with an injury. And we're not going to get an update for another couple of weeks. So again, big chance for the Ducks to pick up 2 huge points. And Frank Vatrano, big chance to get at least 1 goal tonight. Something about that dad energy. It's almost always the new dad energy that gets a player going, that gets the best out of someone. Yeah, it's got to happen. It's got to happen tonight. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to be sad if they win. But I think this is the kind of night where it's deserving. 1 goal at least for Frankie. That's such a positive way to finish the podcast. I just love it. I love that kind of news. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, among others. You could follow me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. You could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. I know I was going to talk about some of the players that need to step up, but that was such good news that I couldn't not talk about that. Let's see what else. Email, I said, thanks for making this your first listen of the day. Go ahead and make Locked On NHL your second listen of the day. And once again, thank you all so much for your continued support. It is incredibly appreciated, folks. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Once again, congratulations to the entire Vatrano family. Please remember to be safe out there. Please be kind to one another. Please be kind to yourselves. And Ducks fly together.